On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, what are the Thunder's expectations this season, and what are the burning questions as we enter the next season?
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I am your host, media member, and beat writer for Thunder on SI, Rylan Stiles. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LO Thunderpod. On today's show, we're talking about the biggest questions that this season has to offer with Chase James. You write for us also at Thunder on SI. Chase, this is a very exciting season for the Thunder. How are you doing as we kind of wait and count down the days for the next season?
I'm doing great, man. It's definitely that dead part of the off season where it's a struggle to figure out what to talk about anymore. But we'll do what we can. And by the way, I've been wanting to be on here since I met you back in January at that Magic game. So I'm really thankful you let me on.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I appreciate you coming on. And of course, you can go check us out at Thunder on SI, where we always have articles out there about this Thunder team, because while there is nothing new happening right now, this Thunder team has made some big offseason acquisitions to where it leads to a lot of speculation, a lot of questions around this time. And there's still a lot to look forward to about this season, where it keeps them in the news cycle. Although they're competing now with college football in the NFL, you're still to yourself wondering what this Thunder team will look like, and we'll soon have that answer as media day and training camp will happen at the end of this next month. For you, whenever you think about next season, everybody's projecting that the Thunder will be the top team in the West. They'll be the team that faces Boston in the NBA Finals. That's going to be very difficult to do. But when you look at this season, what is the biggest question mark looming over it?
I mean, looking back at last season, getting the number one seed in the first place, at least to me, that was a little surprising. I figured they would take a jump to be, a good playoff contender, but not really a championship level team already. To me, this season, they should be, but it's hard to expect them to get 57 wins again. I think there's a balance between are they going to be a better team? Maybe, but are they still going to be able to get the number one seed? I'm not so sure. Because the West, Minnesota, Denver, Dallas, those are tough teams to once again get over.
Yeah, and I think that this season can be defined a little bit, not by win total as it has been. Like recently, as you mentioned, leaping up to 40 wins was a big deal, especially leaping from 40 to 57, like back-to-back seasons of 15-plus improvement. There is no way to go with a plus 15 this year. Obviously, you're not going to go 82-0. You're not going to win those historic marks. So you're probably not going to improve your win total, or very negligibly improve your win total. And I think that there's a very strong case that as you enter this season, you have to be comfortable with the fact that like a 55-win Thunder team, a 53-win Thunder team, or a 56-win Thunder team could be better than last year's team, even if their record is not. And likely will be better than last year's team, no matter what the record says.
Absolutely. You would expect Gilgeous-Alexander, he's going to be an MVP candidate again. Chet Holmgren is going to take a sophomore year jump. I don't have any doubt about that. Jalen Williams will continue to improve. And then, you look at the roster, like Casey Wallace. I expect him to take a jump, being the main backup point guard and getting an increased role.
Yeah, I think that Casey Wallace is one of those guys that you look at to have a breakout season.
Absolutely. He's definitely my breakout pick for this season. He was kind of underrated, I felt like, last season. But this season, I think he's really going to take that jump. And I look forward to Isaiah Joe also off the bench in that backcourt. I think that's going to be pretty dynamic to have backing up Shea, Dort, and Caruso.
So whenever I look at this season, one of the biggest questions that I've gotten about this team since they've gotten their offseason out of the way is who's going to start. Like, you're going to put Caruso in that Giddey spot. Are you going to put Hartenstein in the starting five? I think that there's a bit of a different conversation happening where, nationally, people are just assuming that, Hartenstein's going to start given his price tag. I don't think that that's quite the right assumption, but I also think that Hartenstein will play alongside Chet for more than 2%. Like last year, the big number was 2% of the minutes was all that Chet played with another big. That number is clearly going to go up with Hartenstein. My biggest question of the season is, how do you manage that? Like, how often are you playing Chet as a power forward in that maybe Jaren Jackson Jr. role where he's roaming it defensively and becoming a force in that way? So with you, what do you think the starting lineup will be?
I expect it to be Shea, Dort, Caruso, Jalen Williams, Chet. One of my biggest questions too was how much is Hartenstein and Holmgren going to play? I just don't see it being in the starting lineup. I think they brought Hartenstein to fill in that backup center spot that was really non-existent. I mean, Jalen Williams was fine, but you still lost a lot of the defense and rebounding when Holmgren left the floor. The Thunder struggled, and Hartenstein's going to come in and allow there to always be a quality center that can defend and rebound. They will definitely play in lineups more than I think Jalen Williams did last season. But I think Caruso makes more sense in the starting lineup. He's basically the perfect 3-and-D player you could imagine. Shot 40% from 3 last year, all defensive second team defense. I think he just makes more sense with what the Thunder are doing right now.
Yeah, if I had to guess, that's how I would have things mapping out right now. And I think that they sort of swap Caruso and Giddey in every situation where, like last year, when you took Giddey off, you also took off J-Dub and Chet and put them back in, and let Shea and Dort finish the quarter. I imagine they're going to do the same thing with that group this year as well. So I think it could look very similar to last year, but obviously you're going to see more than 2% of those minutes. But how much more is a big question mark, because these are two guys in Hartenstein and Holmgren that have not played heavy minutes. And of course, big men naturally don't play a ton of minutes comparatively to guards. And so when you're trying to cover 48 minutes of a game in rim protection, the amount of time that they share the floor together limits how you can do that. But by the same token, the Thunder are also not going to abandon playing small. Like, that is a huge asset that they have. So there's a lot of different avenues and a lot of different ways to take advantage of your opponent and to maximize your roster. And it's up to Mark to figure out like when to go big, when to go small, because you can do just so many different things. And with that power to do a ton of different things comes a great responsibility of figuring out when to deploy these different lineups. So I think that will be a testament to, like, in the beginning of the season, maybe what stops you from winning 57 games is you're exploring your roster, you're trying to find what works, and you might drop a game or two. Whereas last year, they were nearly perfect because they still explored their roster. They still cared about development, but they still won 57 games. A couple bad breaks, though, as last year they had a lot of second half comebacks, a couple bad breaks, and all of a sudden you're a 55-win team while still being a better product for it. So I would not get too wrapped up in the win total of this Thunder team. I think that they're going to be a team that is better for contention come postseason time. But that's one of, I think, the biggest question of this next season is the starting lineup and who will fill it. And so we answered that. We'll answer some more coming up. But I want to tell you right now, but our friends over at eBay Motors. eBay Motors is awesome. It has everything you need for your vehicle because they understand that passion, drive, patience, that's the formula for winning a championship. It's also the formula for keeping your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performances, from superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts to choose from, your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for at eBay's Guaranteed Fit. It's guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time your money back, because with eBay Motors, you'll be burning rubber, not cash. It's the path to keep it at the prices that you want and keep your ride or die alive. It's easy at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply at eBay Motors. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. And we're here with Chase Geems of SI Thunder, Thunder on SI, and a plethora of other outlets, and especially talking about the Mizzou Tigers over there. You can find him on Twitter just by searching up his name. But Chase, we've answered the starting lineup questions, but there's still a lot more. And one of those questions you mentioned was Chet Holmgren taking a second-year leap. And I think that, we're obviously both confident in that happening. We're both confident in Chet Holmgren getting better. And I think that this Thunder team's done a really good job of building around high work ethic, highly driven players who also have high potential. What does the path look like? Like, what does the outcome look like for Chet Holmgren to improve on an already stellar rookie season?
I think having a bigger offensive role is going to help that. I think Mark's talked about that on having him have the ball more in his hands and even play make. I mean, expanding his offensive game to just what it was last season. I mean, he shot the ball well from three and was good at the paint, but I think he has a lot more to develop around those edges. And I mean, defensively, I mean, he was already amazing last year, but there's still more he can do. I think Hartenstein's going to allow him to play a little bit more like a different defense, like against forwards and on the perimeter. So I think he's going to have an opportunity to do different things than he did in his rookie year.
Yeah, it'll look a lot different. I think that one of the pathways for Chet to get better is simply the players around him getting better. Like, I think that Shea will take a step forward as an on-ball playmaker. I think that J-Dub will take a step forward as an on-ball playmaker. And so last year, I think that you saw those two guys specifically are so talented at hitting tough mid-range jumpers. And you can have a reliance on hitting tough mid-range jumpers, especially when you convert at the clip that they do. But realizing how talented Chet is, and not just talented, but how good of a passer he is, to where if you hit Chet on pick and rolls earlier and he gets walled off at the rim, he can redirect that pass back out to you, and then you can take your highly difficult mid-range shot. So little stuff like that, I think, can just immediately uptick Chet's box score and counting stats to where it looks a lot different on Basketball Reference. But in reality, it's tweaks that other people are making in addition to him. But he also talked about on Paul George's podcast about being more comfortable shooting over smaller players. And that level of assertion in his game will be huge, because last year you saw where he was always thinking about the next pass, thinking about making the right decision and trying to find the best shot, when sometimes the best shot sometimes is Chet Holmgren being covered by a guard and not the wide open corner three from one of his teammates. Like, he's one of those level of players. And whenever you realize that, that's when your game takes the next step. I mean, we were talking about that with SGA 2 years ago. Like 2 years ago, he was trying to make all the right decisions and get guys open whenever he had to be more quote unquote selfish and in a more controlled way. And so he was able to do that. He got to the free throw line and he scores 30 points per game now routinely. So I think that with Chet, there will be a second year jump. It's just going to be interesting to see what that looks like.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's built the trust as well to be that player, be a second, third option. I don't know necessarily, what those stats are going to look like. Is he going to get to 20 points per game? I don't know yet. But it's very possible if they're going to use him more offensively and as a scorer, then that could very well happen.
Another question that I have would be, do you think that the Thunder have two All-Stars? I mean, we're considering Shea a lock, but does someone else jump into that conversation?
It's tough. It's going to be J-Dub or Chet if they're going to get two. If they're another number one seed, I think it's hard to just leave both of them off if they're averaging like around 20 points per game. But I'm not confident that's going to happen, to be honest.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's just the nature of how tough it is to make an all-star team. Again, using Shea as the guideline here, like everyone knew Shea was an all-star caliber player and he was that good 2 years ago whenever he kept getting passed over to be an all-star. And one time he got passed over for a Mike Conley Lifetime Achievement Award. So I don't think that, like, given how tough the West is, how great that roster is, I don't think that there'll be, all-stars on the first run, but we see every year injury replacements happen. And then that's whenever you can start to expand the all-star roster and you can see one of Chet or J-Dub get in. So maybe come game day, I think that they'll have two, but I don't think it'll be from a product of, hey, here's just the roster for you. And I don't think it'll be anything that they've done. I think that those two guys will both play at levels that warrant being an all-star. It's the politics. It's what goes into actually making the team. But Chase, do you have another big question for this Thunder team that you're really curious about?
I guess I wanted to ask you we talked about Casey Wallace earlier, but do you have a different breakout pick for this season?
Yeah, I think that Casey Wallace is a really good one. I think that there's an element of breakout for Wiggins, just in the sense of, locally, everyone understands what Aaron Wiggins is. He got his extension this summer. And with that extension, I think that whenever you sign an extension with a guy, it just signifies security. It signifies what you think of them, how you believe in them as an organization. And there were still at times last year where you would leave a game and think, man, I really was wanting more Aaron Wiggins minutes, and I don't know why Wiggins didn't play, or I don't know why Wiggins wasn't more involved from a rotational standpoint, because every time he's on the floor, he makes a positive impact. I think that this season you will see less and less of that sentiment, in the sense of, I think that he, with this extension, should have a caked in number that he plays each and every night. And every time you've given him an opportunity, he's produced. And so now with a more consistent role, I think that it'll produce at a clip that gets attention from around the NBA sphere.
Yeah, I agree. I was in the same boat last year where I felt like he deserved more minutes and he just couldn't find it for whatever reason. But he does everything, all the little things right. And I think he's definitely going to be one of the top guys off the bench for the Thunder, like throughout the entire year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what they kind of do to manage their rotation and manage their bench and everything like that. Which, whenever you look at this team, we can rattle off at least 10 guys, if not more, where you sit back right now in September and August and think, well, yeah, they've got to play Wiggins, they've got to play Joe, they've got to play all these guys. But come game night, I mean, you can really have to be more purposeful with who you put on the court, and that's where I think Mark's habits of already going 10 and 11 deep are building for this opportunity. You are setting that foundation all the way back from when this team was tanking till now. Even last year when they won 57 games, they routinely have gone 10, 11, 12 guys deep in the regular season to set that foundation, set that culture of what to expect. And now when you do have a flushed out roster with so many talented guys, the learning curve and the ability to manage everybody's minutes and everything becomes easier because you've been doing it for so long in this culture. So I'm interested to see what that looks like for this team, and how fast that Alex Caruso just becomes an absolute fan favorite, because you watch his introductory press conference when he was talking about Mark and their relationship, and it seems like they have a fantastic relationship. He's a very charismatic guy with the media, which we know that Thunder fan bases and Thunder social media loves. And then he just plays basketball the way Oklahoma Cityans and Oklahomans love to play basketball, where it is just an ability to grind it out, dive on the floor, do whatever it takes to create possessions in kind of a hard-nosed fashion. So Caruso, I think, will have a huge uptick in his stock just by playing in Oklahoma City in front of a fan base that really appreciates that style of play.
Absolutely. Honestly, he was the perfect guy they could have added on this team this offseason, unless it was some star like Markkanen or something like that. I'm looking forward to seeing him alongside Dort. I think defensively, guards are going to have a nightmare every night trying to go up against them too. It's ridiculous.
Guards are going to have a nightmare, and then when they leave the game, Cason Wallace enters, and so it's going to be a lot of fun to watch this Thunder team. Coming up, do you believe the expectations for this Thunder team? Should they be as high as they are? And any more questions that you have about this season? We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you, talking Thunder basketball. Chase, any more big questions you have as we sit back and try to preview this season?
Do you think it's Shea's time to win MVP?
You know, I really believe that Shea's a good bet for MVP, because right now he's still sitting, depending on the book. We love FanDuel. So at FanDuel, he's third right now in MVP. The odds are, like, MVP is not one of those awards where you can really pick a massive dark horse. It typically is within the realm of the top 3 or 5 players. So that's pretty good value as far as MVP goes. And then when you really break down the candidacy, number one, I think voters care too much about legacy. They care too much about precedent to give Jokic another one, especially in such short order. So I think it'd be very hard for Jokic to do better and to do good enough where he surpasses what we now expect of him to win another award, given how much voters place into, well, so-and-so doesn't have that many MVPs, and so-and-so never won in such consecutive order, to where that's going to be really difficult for him to get that opportunity. So I would say you cast him to the side a little bit whenever you're trying to sift through who you'll pick for MVP. Then you have Luka Doncic, who, like, if Luka Doncic plays all 82 games, Luka Doncic is going to win MVP. He's one of the best players in the sport. He will get the necessary counting stats guaranteed. Like, he will be awesome. But I look at Dallas and wonder if last year they were the 5th seed. Luka was hurt the entire playoffs, and they went to the NBA Finals. So I wonder if they sit back and think, well, let's just get in. I mean, we have Clay, we have Kyrie, we have Luka. These are 2 Asian guys plus a guy who's had injury histories. Let's just coast, do enough to get in, and then that way we'll secure the health of Luka Doncic. Now, if they go that way, of course, it discourages Luka's MVP candidacy. If they don't go that way, though, then Luka's a fantastic option to win MVP. But with that question mark, I would move Shea above him in terms of like who you would pick to win it. And then you get to Shea, where I know this team's going to be young enough to still care about the regular season. I know this team's going to rattle off regular season wins. I know he's going to score 30 points per game. And I know that as we talk about voter history, typically NBA media voters are a year behind on this sort of thing. And once you start to hear what we heard this offseason, where it's like Dwayne Wade, Paul George, other players, other media start to go, we probably should have voted for him last year. They typically give him the award the next year. I mean, you look at the Jokic Embiid debate and others in the past, like, they typically are a year behind and they just go ahead and give it to that guy. I mean, even the Mark Daigneault Coach of the Year thing was a year behind, where that last off season, it was like, well, Mark had a really good case, even though he didn't win it. Then he wins it the next year. So that bodes well for him too. The only issue that it could find with Shea is that I don't know how much more his basketball reference page can uptick. And obviously the team can't get better than 1st seed. So it's going to be difficult to top what he did last year. But I think that he does still have some factors working for him.
Yeah, I mean, so the first year he was an MVP candidate, I think he finished 5th. I don't know if you remember.
Yeah, 5th.
Okay. And then it was 2nd last year.
Yep.
So to me, it's just kind of been an upward trajectory. And I feel like this season it's kind of lining up for him to get it, especially what you're talking about with Luka and Dallas. And Jokic is, I don't see him winning again. I don't think there's any way the voters will do that. So as long as everything goes kind of how it was last year, they're a top seed, averages 30 points a game, stays healthy, I think he's probably the top option for the season.
Yeah, I think that it is Shea's time to win an MVP and to get that award. So it'll be fun to see. That'd be 3 MVPs in Oklahoma City. Of course, James Harden also played in OKC. Paul George made a run at it as well. It's been an embarrassment of riches, if you will, for Oklahoma City since getting a professional basketball team. But with that being said, this team holds lofty expectations. They see themselves as the 2nd best title odds, as the best odds to win the West, the best odds to be the 1 seed in the West, and over-under set at 56.5 in terms of win total. When you look at this Thunder team, what would you consider a success? Because I think that it's a lot different than in recent years.
So the Thunder have championship expectations, and I think they deserve to have those placed on them. But to me, this season, they just need to get past the 2nd round. I think you take it one step at a time with those expectations. I think last year they had a very good chance to beat Dallas, and they didn't perform in those last couple of games. Getting to the Western Conference Finals is a step forward, and to me, that's a success for this season.
Yeah, and I think that that's going to be an area where, like, 2 years ago, getting to the play-in was considered a just absolute knock it out of the park season. Last year, you could have just simply been in the top 6, and it would have been a out of the park season. The only way to have one of those just everyone acknowledges from here to kingdom come as a successful season is by winning the NBA championship. Because anything short of that, there's going to be a pocket of people, and it just depends on how growingly loud it is, that does not agree with the Thunder having maxed out their potential. So that changes, and I'm interested to see how the team handles that change, where it's going to be more pressure-packed games. It's going to be a more intense discussion around them. But for this team, like you mentioned, the Western Conference Finals, you get there, I think that you can be disappointed because anytime you get that close to a championship and fall short, there's going to be just little tiny bounces that could have gone your way where you wonder what if. But I think is still a step in the right direction. Short of that, you would be at best stepping laterally and at worst stepping back. So I would have to imagine that Western Conference Finals or better would be a season in which you can consider, hey, this is still positive, this is still moving forward, this is still going right. But I'd also say in the Western Conference, like last year, Denver went from winning a championship to losing in 7 in the second round because the West is just that competitive and that tough. So I think that this season, it'll take a little more nuance than just what was your win total and where'd you finish in the playoff bracket. But in general, on paper right now, the Thunder have the ability to match up with every tough team in the West. They have the talent necessary from top to bottom. They have the coaching staff in place. So I think that it is fair to say that you need to at least make the Western Conference Finals.
Right. I agree.
Chase, thank you so much for joining us. Let them know where they can find you on Twitter, what you've got cooking up at SI, Thunder on SI, and everywhere else they can find all your work as you cover many a team.
Yeah, thank you. So this week for Mizzou, they're opening their college season. And for the Thunder, I'm doing a series this week looking at 4 players for next season. Started with Isaiah Hartenstein, did Dylan Jones today. I'm still doing Aaron Wiggins and Casey Wallace. And then you can find me on Twitter at Chase James.
Chase, thank you for joining us, and I really appreciate it. So we'll have you on again. Again, go check out Thunder on SI. Go check out Chase, and good luck this semester. Good luck this school year, and hopefully we'll have you back down for another Thunder game eventually this year. But Chase, it was great meeting that game and great having you on. So until next time, be good and be good to one another.